Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating framework based on some incredibly sharp advice from Jack Ma. You know how we all make those generic New Year's resolutions that, let's be honest, usually end up completely abandoned by February? Well, forget that. We're going to look at an exact day-by-day blueprint for fundamentally changing your life's trajectory. We're breaking down a super practical roadmap to see exactly what a real transformation requires. And we're kicking it off with the ultimate challenge. Okay, I want you to imagine something with me for a second. Imagine someone comes up to you and says you have exactly 1 year, just 365 days, to completely change your life. But here's the catch. After that single year is up, everything gets harder. Things get way more expensive, and the market gets significantly more crowded. So the clock starts right now. What exactly would you do?
So let's dive into this. When most people hear that question, their immediate response involves these massive, sweeping life changes. Most of us are full of big, world-changing dreams, kind of like launching a giant rocket ship, but we suffer from having a completely blank notepad when it comes to what we're actually going to do tomorrow morning. People say, oh, I'll travel the world, or I'll finally start that business, or I'll write a best-selling book, but the room goes completely silent the second you ask for their daily plan.
Well, in this explainer, we're fixing that gap once and for all. This framework gives us a highly actionable 4-part roadmap for the next year. First, months 1 to 3, the foundation. Then, months 4 to 6, the build. Next, months 7 to 9, the momentum. And finally, months 10 to 12, the finish.
All right, let's start right at the beginning with months 1 through 3, the foundation. Here's the absolute truth about foundations. They are completely invisible to the outside world. I mean, think about it. No one claps when you're just pouring concrete, right? But without it, the whole shebang falls apart. So, during these first 3 months, this framework suggests radical, uncompromising focus. You gotta ignore all those shiny outside distractions and zero in on 3 very specific steps. Finding your one thing, fixing your daily system, and finding your one person. Let's look at exactly what that means. Turns out, finding your one thing is not about chasing whatever is trending on social media today. It's not even about chasing what makes the most money right now. Actually, it's about identifying a specific problem that bothers you so deeply that you would gladly work on fixing it for free. When Jack Ma was first conceptualizing Alibaba, he wasn't sitting around dreaming of billions of dollars. He was just incredibly frustrated by small businesses in China that couldn't sell their products. That frustration, that became his absolute compass. So your entire first quarter is dedicated to figuring out what problem bothers you enough to dedicate your life to it.
Once you've actually found your direction, you need to look at the gears of your daily system. It's incredibly simple, but you have to be rigid about it. Every single day, good or bad, you rely on a checklist. You wake up and ask what absolutely must be finished today. You work for 1 solid, uninterrupted hour without looking at your phone. You read for 30 minutes, and you do a quick 2-minute review of your day right before you go to sleep. Alongside this daily system, you need to find a mentor. Not some unattainable billionaire, but someone just 2 to 3 years ahead of you to show your brain the how. Seeing a real, relatable person succeed at your level makes your brain instantly stop saying impossible.
So let's see how this all builds on our timeline. As we leave the fresh, hyped-up excitement of that first quarter, we hit month 4, crossing into what is absolutely, without a doubt, the most brutal stretch of the calendar.
Welcome to months 4 through 6, the build.
Look, I've got to be totally honest with you about this phase. The initial adrenaline is completely gone. Your results are probably still tiny. And, people around you might even be secretly laughing at your efforts. Which brings us to a pretty staggering number, 90%. This phase is known as the Valley of Despair, and it is exactly where 90% of people simply throw in the towel. The friction just feels way too high. So, how do you actually survive it?
To survive this valley, the framework suggests a really critical psychological trick. You have to stop measuring your progress against that massive, distant goal at the end of the year. If you do that, it literally only highlights how far you still have left to go, which is super discouraging. Instead, you've got to measure strictly against where you were exactly 90 days ago. Ask yourself, 90 days ago, did I have this skill? Was I this consistent? Because honestly, small progress every single day for 90 days, that is no longer small progress.
Now, during this difficult phase, you're probably going to feel an overwhelming urge to pivot or to add totally new skills just because your current results feel painfully slow. The blueprint says resist that urge. You must go deeper into your one thing, not wider. It's exactly like digging one really deep well instead of just scratching the surface in 10 different spots hoping to find water. Plus, this is the quarter where you have to courageously show a small, imperfect piece of your work to the world. You have to prove to yourself that you are actually out there building.
And here's the beautiful part. If you can just put your head down and survive that quiet, stormy middle section of the year, the clouds finally break. You cross the threshold and unlock the incredible third quarter.
This brings us to months 7 through 9, the momentum. Sometime during this quarter, a massive shift occurs. All that quiet, invisible work you did during the foundation and the build suddenly starts generating visible opportunities. Doors that were previously locked shut just start to crack open. It's like a tree finally sprouting above ground. People actually begin to notice. But the absolute most important shift here is internal. You aren't just relying on blind faith anymore. You are being fueled by 6 solid months of documented proof. Your belief transforms from fragile to completely unshakable.
So now that you have this real momentum, the roadmap requires you to completely pivot your strategy. Think about it. In the first half of the year, you were isolated and hyper-focused. Now, you need to start saying yes to more things. Let your documented proof build your network. And crucially, look at this spiral effect. The blueprint requires you to find someone else and help them. Lifting someone else up is the exact mechanism that creates a spiral of completely unstoppable momentum.
And that unstoppable momentum functions exactly like a wave, carrying us right into the final stretch of your transformative year.
We've arrived at months 10 through 12, the finish.
Okay, I need to give you a serious warning from the source text here. Because you now have momentum and actual visible results, your brain is going to try to convince you to relax, take your foot off the gas, and celebrate early. But it turns out, the most tragic gap in life isn't between starters and quitters. No, it's the massive gap between people who pushed through all the way to the checkered flag and those who only almost finished because they got way too comfortable too soon.
So during these final months, you have to do the exact opposite of relaxing. You need to push harder than you did all year. Wake up earlier, eliminate any of those lingering distractions, and truly harness the totally unique psychological energy that the finish line provides. It's an energy the middle months simply do not have. As you sprint to the end, just take a second to look back at exactly who you were 10 months ago, and let that undeniable growth fuel your absolute final steps.
We've covered the entire timeline now, but here is the profound, ultimate secret that actually makes this entire roadmap work. Jack Ma realized that a year only transforms your life if you make the quiet, intensely honest decision to actually begin. Not when things get a little easier, but right now.
Let's be real. Most people spend the entire year just hoping things will somehow be different next year. They're wishing for perfect conditions, maybe a little more money in the bank, or a burst of magical confidence. But hoping isn't deciding. Deciding means looking at reality, picking up the heavy bricks, and saying, I'm starting today with whoever I am right now and whatever I have right now.
Your one transformative year doesn't magically begin when the economic conditions are perfect. The clock on your 365 days doesn't start when you feel completely, 100% ready. It starts the exact moment you choose to begin. You now have the full roadmap: foundation, build, momentum, and finish. So the only real question left is, will you